Hi everyone, Lee Bertrand here with another edition of Real Estate Real Advice. So here's a scenario. You find a house online and you decide you like the house and you go directly to the listing agent. And the listing agent agrees to handle your side of the transaction as the buyer in addition to the seller side of the transaction. Sounds great. What could possibly go wrong? Well, stick with me and we'll talk about that. Well, first question is why would you not want to use a real estate broker as the buyer? The first misperception is that the buyer pays a real estate commission for the buyer's agent. That's not true. In 99.9% of the time, a seller pays the buyer's agent's commission. So you as a buyer, you don't have to pay that buyer's agent commission. Second misperception is that you might get some price concession or reduction in price since the seller wouldn't have to pay a buyer's agent. Very unlikely, very unlikely. So the problem is you have no representation in the transaction as the buyer. You're going to be working with a listing agent who has changed his status to what's called a transaction broker, and that's a person who simply handles the transaction, the contracts, the closing on both sides of the transaction. He is not an agent or an advocate for you. So the flow of information between the buyer and the seller, it's all by the transaction broker who doesn't represent you. You're not represented in the transaction for verification of contract information. There's no one to verify validity of the statements made by the seller and inspectors. And most importantly, price negotiations. Ask yourself, are you a skilled real estate negotiator? Do you have all the information, the tools to figure out the value of the home, to see comparable sales and come up with a competitive offer? Really? And the contract dates is another issue. The seller may, for example, want unreasonable post-closing occupancy. There's some negotiation that needs to happen there as well. Inspection objections. You're going to get an inspection done for the home, and that inspection report is going to have every little nitpicking thing found in the house. That's their job as inspectors. But what should you really object to and not object to in this market relative to the seller's motivation? You're not going to know any of that stuff. Inspection resolutions. When the seller comes back with the resolution, says, here's what we're going to do relative to your objections. What should you accept to keep the deal moving? The seller may not be using a listing agent on top of it. If they're a for sale by owner and they're not even using a listing agent, they may not have all the right contract information put together for doing the transaction in the first place. So it's risky. So the bottom line is engage a licensed real estate broker when purchasing a home who is an advocate for you in your best interest. And if you have any questions, give me a call or send me an email at the contact information below, and we'll see you on the next edition of Real Estate Real Advice.